And we are live. It's Dr. J here in the house. Hope everyone is doing phenomenal. Today we're going to be doing a live Q&A. I'm going to talk about probiotics here just for a few minutes and the three major kinds I use in my clinic and the results, and also what the goals are, what the expectations are. All right, let's dive in. So probiotics are beneficial bacteria. There's three kind of families that I categorize probiotics in. We have like your Lactobacillus and your Bifidobacter species. These are like the most kind of common and most well-researched. You see this like in your VSL3, kind of more conventional probiotics. Bifidobacter, there's about 10 or 20 different species within the Bifidobacter. There's Lactobacillus, right? Lactobacillus acidophilus, Paracasei, etc. So there's many different species within that. Those are the two big families of your conventional type of probiotics. Then we have spore-based probiotics. Bacillus family, Bacillus Colosii, Bacillus coagulans, Bacillus licheniformis, Bacillus subtilis. These are more spore or soil-based probiotics. And then we have our next kind, which is our Saccharomyces, which is more of a beneficial yeast, but has also effects on the microbiome, improving IgA, helping with infections, etc. So let me go through each one. So first off, with the Bifidobacter and Lactobacillus, there's a couple of major goals why we're taking probiotics. Number one is we're trying to support bacterial balance. Maybe you just took in an antibiotic. Maybe your gut health is off because you have SIBO or bacterial overgrowth. It can be helpful to nudge your microbiome in that beneficial side because you have a dysbiosis, right? Dysbiosis means more bad than good. So imagine you have this relationship, a seesaw relationship. Here's your good bacteria, here's your bad bacteria. As the bad bacteria increases, you typically have this drop in beneficial bacteria. So really important to help with the good bacteria. Now, when you take a probiotic, it's not staying forever. It's staying for a couple of weeks, maybe a month. It's transient. This is why it's important that you have fermented foods in your diet so you're getting access to probiotics more frequently. Probiotics actually produce various acids that make it harder for bad bacteria to grow. So if you look at Lactobacillus acidophilus, acidophilus literally translates to acid loving. Okay, so you're producing lots of good acids that actually keep a lot of the bad stuff in check. Number two, good bacteria actually crowd out and actually make it harder for good guys to grow. So for instance, Lactobacillus can actually help H. pylori. It can help various parasitic infections. So by increasing that bacteria, it's harder for infections to grow. Number three, it's going to help reduce inflammation in your guts. Higher levels of good bacteria reduces inflammation. Number four, it's also going to help with gut permeability. So we have tight junctions in our gut, and when these tight junctions open up, we can actually get bacteria and food particles going into our bloodstream, and they can activate our immune system and stress our body out. So leaky gut's a big thing. It's also one of the major catalysts for autoimmune condition. And then number five is good bacteria actually puts out nutrients. Vitamin K, certain B vitamins. So healthy levels of bacteria actually increase endogenous nutrient production. So really, really important. So that's just like our Lactobacillus bifidobacter. Then we have our spore-based probiotics, which hang around a lot longer. They're more acid resistant. You actually take them with food, where your typical bifidobacter or lactobacillus, typically on an empty stomach, is ideal. You'll still have some benefit taking it with food, but ideally empty stomach's ideal. Spore-based probiotic, we want to take it with food. It's acid resistant. It actually potentiates the growth of other good bacteria. And for people that have a lot of SIBO, which means they have maybe more probiotic intolerance, well, how do you know that? Well, if you get more bloated or gassy when you take Bifidobacter, your conventional probiotics, that's a good sign that you probably have SIBO. People that tend to have that level of bloat or intolerance do better with spore-based probiotics. They tend to be D-lactate-free. D-lactate's a compound produced by beneficial probiotics. And so when you have D-lactate-free, less bloating, less gas, very helpful. And then also, the other ace up my sleeve is going to be Saccharomyces boulardii. So in my line, I use one called Sacroflora. The probiotic, the Bifidobacter lactobacillus one is called ProbioFlora. And then the spore-based probiotic, I use one called Megaspore, which works really well. I've used it for about 5 years with great results. So the Saccharomyces helps with a couple of reasons. So number one, it's a kind of a beneficial yeast. It's kind of this beneficial yeast kind of in this probiotic family kind of hybrid. It helps improve IgA levels. So it helps with the localized gut immune system, which is really helpful. People that have chronic gut inflammation or gut stress, they tend to have stressed out IgA levels, either acutely high because they're dealing with an infection or chronically low because their immune system is stressed and depleted. Number two, Saccharomyces can actually help crowd out yeast. So if you have candida overgrowth Microsporidium, yeast overgrowth, whatever that yeast is, it can actually help crowd out a lot of that not so good yeast. And Saccharomyces at higher levels can actually help with things like blasto. It can help with H. pylori. So it can really help knock down some of these infections that people have a hard time knocking out. So Saccharomyces is an important part of any of the protocols that I put in place. So in general, I kind of have this 6R approach in how I address a patient's gut issue. So we're removing the bad foods. We want to actually make sure we're feeding our microbiome with good, healthy, anti-inflammatory, nutrient-dense, low-toxin foods. But we also want to make sure that we're starving out some of the bad bacteria. So a lot of the refined, processed carbohydrates, acellular carbohydrates are the preferential food source of a lot of the bad bacteria. Sometimes we have to be more restrictive with FODMAPs too. So that's a case-by-case basis. Number two, we're better digesting our food. So we're adding in good enzymes and digestive support to really line that up. The third R is we're working on calming down the gut lining. So if we see there's a lot of inflammation in the gut, maybe we see on their gut test there's increase in the immune response. Maybe there is increased calprotectin or lactoferrin, which is a marker of inflammation. We may want to add in more things to help soothe or calm down the gut lining. Also, looking at potential hormone support, because if someone's really hormonally depleted, their inflammation is up, their hormonal systems are depleted, we may want to add in more hormone support so they can deal with stress and inflammation better. And that sets the table for the fourth R, which is dealing with infections, removing the infections. Very important. So we have to set the table with the third R to deal with the fourth R. And a lot of people do better removing the infections and adding in a punctuated protocol of probiotics during the fifth R. Fifth R, repopulate, reinoculate, probiotics. That's the fifth R. And some people do a lot better during the fifth R because they've kind of cleaned out the weeds, so to speak, right? They've kind of gone to the garden, they've ripped out the weeds. Now when they drop down the seeds, there's a lot more space within the garden for those seeds to grow. In other words, it's like going to the car wash. You get your car washed and waxed, right? You don't want to layer up a whole bunch of good wax on top of a whole bunch of dirt, right? That just traps everything in place. Same thing with your gut. Kind of clean down the gut, kind of do some pruning or trimming, and then drop down the seeds. Patients tend to do a lot better with that. And then, of course, the 6R is retesting. So we want to get a good look at the retest, make sure there's no other newer infections that could be at play. Because sometimes we clean out someone's infection, we retest, and then now there's something new that we have to address, or maybe it was deeper in the gut a lot of times and now it's coming to the surface. So really important how we look at probiotics. Three major ones that we look at: Bifidobacter lactobacillus. This is kind of like your VSL3. In my line, it's ProbioFlora. Then we have our spore-based probiotics. People that are more sensitive do better with this. This is like our Megaspore. And then we have the Saccharomyces. In my line, that's Sacroflora. That's the Saccharomyces boulardii. Very helpful as well. We'll put links down for the ones that I have. Other people have really good ones too, but just kind of keep that in the back of your head. And you want to plug these in, I just say, into a comprehensive plan. I tell patients, once your gut's doing good, probably take a probiotic, bottle maybe once a quarter. Go through a good bottle or two of probiotics is probably great. You may need it more frequently if you're not doing fermentable foods. If you're not doing probiotics like sauerkraut or kimchi or a lower sugar kombucha or some fermented pickles, you may need to put probiotics into your diet more regularly from a supplement form. So less frequently if you're actually getting good fermentable foods in your diet, and you can also tolerate them too. And then a lot of times adding in good healthy prebiotic fibers can actually help a lot of that bacteria grow. Think of prebiotic fibers as more fertilizer to help the seed grow. Now I typically do that later on because I see a lot of people that are my patients that have a lot of SIBO or bacterial overgrowth, and they tend to actually, that fertilizer almost makes the bad bacteria symptoms worse. So we have to time that up a lot later into the kind of sequence so we have optimal results. All right, feel free to kind of chime in with some questions, y'all. I'm going to jump over to YouTube here. Got my little TweetDeck open here. All right, perfect. Couple of questions. Probiotics are known to be transient through the guts. How do you make probiotics stay long-term? You make probiotics stay long-term because, one, they're going to be hanging around for about a month or so. Number two, soil-based probiotics stay longer, so the soil-based probiotics are good to add in. But number two, you'll be adding in probiotics, month to month throughout your life anyway, whether it's supplement-wise or whether it's through fermented foods. So probiotics shouldn't be something you only expose yourself once. We want to ideally have fermentable food exposure. If we go back to the works of Weston A. Price, fermentable food is really, really good. And if we don't get those in more frequently, then you'd want to be on a probiotic support more regularly. Akbar writes in, is an Ayurvedic herb like ghee plus herbs and enema effective in reducing gut infections? So ghee is obviously clarified butter, which is really good, a lot of beta carotene, a lot of good nutrients. And so if we're adding herbs with the ghee, it will really depend upon what the herbs are. I'm not a huge fan of doing enemas just because of the fact I think you can disrupt a lot of the flora in the large intestine. Maybe acutely an enema is okay, but chronically I would not be doing it. Sean writes in, my mom has regular yet pounding heartbeat that she can actually see through her shirt. She said it's relieved by large amounts of salt. Why would this be? Yeah, so this totally makes sense, right? Her electrolyte balance is definitely off. So adding in more sodium, which typically I tell patients, when you have a lot of adrenal dysfunction, you pee through your minerals a lot. So your diet may look good on paper, meaning potassium, good minerals, good magnesium, but you could be peeing it a lot out. So keep that in the back of your head. So if she's getting some high quality sea salt in and that's making her heartbeat go away, that tells me that there's almost a borderline kind of functional hyponatremia happening. Her minerals are low. Also look at making sure potassium and magnesium are adequate too, and get to the root cause of the adrenal issues and make sure her diet's good as well. Can the body produce ketones in the presence of a huge gut inflammation and insulin via glucocorticoids? I mean, it just depends, right? The more inflamed you are, cortisol will mobilize more glucose. So if we're really, really, really bad inflamed, you may have more glucose production from the inflammation. So do your best to kind of get all the inflammation out of your food, because food can be very healing, right? And then you can monitor your blood sugar throughout the day. My favorite marker is just do a fasting insulin blood test. That's helpful. We want to be ideally below 7, ideally between 2 and 5. And run a functional glucose tolerance. We want to be ideally below 100 at fasting. We want to be, 120 to 140 within 1 hour after a meal. Ideally under 100 or at least under 120 at 2 hours. And then at 3 hours, definitely below 100. And we like that because the faster and longer your blood sugar stays up, the more insulin you're making to bring it back down. So the more we take that curve and we can attenuate the blood sugar curve, so it's like, here it is, fasting, and it goes like this at 1 hour, and then it starts to drop at 2 and 3, versus this really high spike and then this slow downward degradation. That means more insulin. So that's a great way of it's an indirect marker that's cheap. Everyone has access to it. And I like it because it gives you the ability to test out different meals, because you can actually look at your cheat meal versus a healthy meal, and you can kind of compare it and see where it's at, which is really nice. Saccharomyces boulardii is one of the spore-based probiotics. What were the others? No, Saccharomyces boulardii is one of its own entities. So Saccharomyces, so it was ProBioFlora or Lactobacillus bifidobacter. That's one family. The second family is spore-based probiotics. That's like your megaspore. And then your third is Saccharomyces, which is like more of a beneficial yeast, but that's kind of in that probiotic family. In my line, that's Sacroflora, just FYI. Could the carnivore diet stand in the early phase of the 6 R's? Yeah, so the first R is going to be removing the bad food. So now a lot of people don't have to go to that carnivore extreme, right? But some people may. So depending on how inflamed someone's gut is or how well they do on certain diets I recommend will kind of indicate whether that next step should be a carnivore template. Let me jump over to Instagram real fast. Katie wrote in, just finished SIBO treatment, biofilms, candibactins, 2 types, and 1 month of bifidus, like you mentioned, keeping up every quarter from now on. Acidophilus or a mix of bifidus and acidophilus. Yeah, ideally a mix, Katie. So I typically do at least 60 days of killing and then at least 60 days of punctuated probiotics, and then everything after that will be dictated upon how much fermented food you can get in your diet. So with my ProBioFlora, I have a blend of 12 different species, so 6 on the lactose side, 6 on the bifido side. So some kind of a blend is ideal for getting good species variation into the gut. Great question. Being Colorado, is there any tie between frozen shoulder and autoimmune disease? Yeah, there definitely is. There's a big tie with frozen shoulder and insulin resistance, especially type 2 or type 1 diabetes. You'll see more type 2 actually. A lot of insulin resistance connected with the shoulder. I think it's just the inflammation really affects the joints and the connective tissue. So yeah, make sure the diet's solid, get your blood sugar under control. And of course, if you have autoimmune issues, there could be blood sugar issues too. Remember you saying you gave your son BioRay probiotics. Can you give this to a newborn? So I give my son BioRay more for detoxification support. So with my son, I give him speed. It depends, right? So I have two kids. I have one that's 2.5 and one that's 5 months. So I give my infant an infant-based probiotic that has more Infantis species in it. There's a couple that, it's not like there are not really too many that I can think of that are recommended for newborns. Jarrow makes one recommended for newborns. That's, I think, a Lactobacillus rhamnosus species. Mama Bliss makes one that's meant for newborns. That's, I think, more of a rhamnosus species as well. And then Claire makes one that's the Therabiotic Infant Blend, and I use that for my infant. It's not recommended for infants, but you just got to understand that no one's going to do a study on someone under 2 years old. So you typically don't have anything recommended for an infant, not because it's not good, but more because it hasn't been tested. So kind of go at your own risk, but I've done that with both of my kids, and I have no issue with it at all. So I do the infant formula, and I will do the BioRay more for detox because there's some gentle chlorella in there, which is really helpful. All right, excellent. Let me gain my footing here. Okay, yeah, Sean writes in, how many days before GI map testing should you be off probiotics as a means to not skew the results? I'd say I typically will actually be on probiotics while doing the GI map testing, but initially, like first time around, typically 1 to 2 weeks being off, like for the first test. Most people are always going to have some level of probiotics in their system afterwards, so I'm okay with it. Yep, so no problem with that. Kathy writes in, TPO high, and I do autoimmune keto, except I still include eggs in my diet. Do you think just taking the whites out of my diet could lower TPO? I mean, personally, I would cut them out. It depends on how high we're talking, right? I would be on an autoimmune diet for at least a couple of weeks to a month, see if your symptoms plateau, and then get a retest before you start adding foods back in, see where your antibodies sit on retest, and then add things back in, maybe retest a couple of weeks later. Riley writes in, is a 1 to 2 week break on the GI killing program too long? Well, it depends. I mean, if you're in the middle of a program, we'd want to, be on it for 60 to 90 days, and we'd only come off of it if we were doing a supplement holiday because we were having a die-off issue. If there was no die-off issue, continue to plow through it and just finish it out. Black Meal writes in, how is the fastest way to starve bad bacteria in the colon? Gas kills me. So the first thing is getting out the junky inflammatory food. So a good paleo template is good to start. Maybe an autoimmune, maybe carnivore, depending on how bad you're at. Next step would be looking at cutting out fermentable carbohydrates. My ProBio Flora was stuck in customs for 2 weeks. Is it bad now? No, you're fine. Especially this time of year, I wouldn't worry about it, Riley. You're good. If you have probiotic intolerance, what are options? Get your gut cleared out. Find a good practitioner, work with them, get your gut cleared out, and then get those probiotics introduced later on. Need a practitioner that can help you go through the 6 R's. Any advice for intermittent fasting for those with gastroparesis? I want to reach autophagy, but my stomach does not empty sometimes for 8 to 10 hours. Yeah, so when you guys have health issues, forget about fasting, right? Forget about it. Throw it on the back burner. Fasting is meant for people that are already healthy, right? Because fasting is essentially a stress on your body. Well, so is exercise, right? But if you have a lot of adrenal dysfunction, you may have to curtail exercise, okay? No shock, we may also have to curtail fasting as well. The only reason we may want to look at fasting is if you feel better fasting, it's probably because there's a food allergen that you're consuming that is causing problems. So we really want to refine and look deeper at what the diet is, see if we can still eat while cutting those inflammatory foods out. Again, this has really got to work with a practitioner on that one. That's a toughie. Dr. J, does HEPA filter plus UV kill mold in the air? Also, what are the best detoxification supplements if can't currently eliminate? So it depends. So there's some technology, like you're going to see the technology with the molecule that uses a PET technology that supposedly kills mold. Then there's other filtration methods, such as HEPA, on top of activated charcoal, on top of zeolite. So with the Austin Air, I love them, justinhealth.com/air. You can take a look at those. Those will help filter out some of the mold toxins. Will the UV actually kill the mold? I'm not sure. The bigger issue is what's the cause of the mold, because no air filter will keep up with the mold in the environment if the root cause of the mold has not been addressed. Does that make sense? So in general, let's say the issue is, hey, it just got humid in your basement, you had some mildew and mold, but you got a dehumidifier, installed. Now the humidity's down, and then now you're putting an air filter in. Would that be enough? Maybe. It may be enough, depending on how high it is. It just depends, did you actually fix the root cause? So you want to fix the root cause, number one. If it's water damage from a leak, obviously fix that, remediate, cut it out, right? Do it in a way that's not going to make the problem worse. Retest, and then you can get some good air filters in. You just got to make sure you're addressing the root cause, and if you're uncertain how bad it is, test your home and maybe even test your own urine to get a window of that. And you may have to provoke it, by the way. You may have to use glutathione for a couple of days or a week before to provoke it so you can actually dump the mold in your urine. Fermented vegetable is good for stomach infections, depending, yeah. If it's not SIBO and if you can tolerate it, it may be okay, but some people may not. Hey Dave, you're welcome. Appreciate it. If you guys enjoy the service I provide here and you really enjoy it, it's beneficial, go leave me a review, justinhealth.com/iTunes. Really appreciate it. Put it in the comments. Give me a share. And if you guys want to dive in and work deeper with myself, justinhealth.com. Click on the schedule button. Hope you guys appreciate it. Is there a connection between SIBO and Candida? Yeah, there definitely is. And there can be. And I always tell my patients, you have the right to have more than one infection going on at the same time. And a lot of times that's the case. Why do probiotics cause irritation? They cause irritation because you're throwing a whole bunch of good seeds into a whole bunch of a garden full of weeds. And it can feed and produce a whole bunch of gases when a lot of these bad bacteria are present. Greetings, Doc. What is your opinion on having to poop every 5 to 6 days? It does not hurt, but I'm concerned about the frequency. On the poop days, I have to poop multiple times that day. So yeah, if you're pooping every 5 to 6 days, that's a big problem. Like literally you are poisoning yourself with your fecal matter, right? Because you need to be eliminating that stool in 18 to 24 hours or you're going to start to reabsorb a lot of the toxins in your stool. So very important, you got to use some kind of a natural support to get your bowels moving while you get to the root cause. Because it may take you a couple of months to get to the root cause, but in the meantime, you have to get your bowels moving. You really want to work with a good practitioner on that and work to my 6 hours like I mentioned earlier in the video. Heidi Rice, thank you for answering my question about infant probiotics. Worried about baby gut health because I had to have antibiotics at birth. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'd make sure you're giving probiotics to yourself. I'd make sure you give probiotics to your baby as well. Make sure they have the Infantis strain and or you can also play around with the Rhamnosus species too. Let's see, let me go back. Do I have a Instagram question at all? Let's see here, any other questions? Just double checking here. All right, cool. Feel free to Instagram, let me know as well. My screen's a little bit smaller, so I got to squint a little bit. All right, let me keep on rolling here. Lately, I've experienced diarrhea when taking high-dose activated charcoal. Any thoughts on potential causes? So activated charcoal is designed to pull things out. Usually activated charcoal causes constipation, not diarrhea. So why it may cause diarrhea, that's interesting. I don't know why. But either way, I would be going to the 6 R's. I'd be changing the diet. I'd be fixing the digestion. I'd be clearing out the gut. And I would just dose the activated charcoal accordingly and make sure it's done away from food and supplements. Matt writes in, is it counterproductive to take adrenal adaptogens if you supplement with DHEA and pregnenolone? No, I typically recommend those together. They work phenomenal. Usama writes in, how to replenish the diversity of bacteria? Probiotic supplements are not enough to replenish the diversity. So you're going to get fermented foods in. If possible, you're going to add in really good healthy prebiotics as well and healthy fibers if you can tolerate too to help provide really good diversity with the gut. Do you like goat kefir probiotics? I mean, goat tends to be more tolerable than cow, right? The casein is more tolerable. So yeah, if you can tolerate it, that's great. What could cause frozen shoulder? So number one, you got to look at insulin resistance in your blood sugar and just the inflammation in your body. Number two, when I used to deal with a lot more physical injuries, I would use either the ARP wave or like the Newbie device, which really would help break down the inflammation while I would adjust that area and or work on some soft tissue. I've treated dozens of frozen shoulders back in my chiropractic days successfully. But you got to fix. A lot of chiropractors miss the boat because they won't fix the blood sugar or the systemic inflammation in the body. They'll just treat the joint, and that's a big mistake. If you do both, now you're cooking with fire. What are some natural remedies to help bowel movements? Do you have videos on this? Thank you for your help. Yeah, just go to justinhealth.com/ youtube and just type in Justin Health, Dr. Justin, and constipation. A lot of good articles there and videos. Lisa writes in, with having Hashimoto's and SIBO, do you target thyroid support first, the gut, or simultaneously trying to decrease a revolving door? So yeah, we're definitely treating the hormones before we're treating the gut. Now, it depends what you mean by treating. So of course, we're making diet changes and digestion support and hormone support a lot of times are going to be going side by side. It just depends, right? Some people come in, they have overt symptoms that we address off the bat, and then sometimes we have to wait a couple of weeks to get labs in. So it just depends what kind of information we have. Now, if someone comes in and I have all that information laid out in front of me, we'll be doing it simultaneously, for sure. Excellent. Very good. Can we use probiotics as a killing agent for pathogenic bacteria? If staph infection is present, instead of using herbs, we use bacteria that kill pathogenic bacteria. Lactorrhinosis, that herbs. You could. It just depends upon how bad the infection is. Like high-dose lactobacillus and bifidobacter can help knock down food poisoning, like from E. coli. Now, my experience is herbs work faster, so I would do the herbs with the probiotics if it was an acute issue. So if I'm on vacation, I'm bringing 1 or 2 bottles of herbs, I'm bringing a bottle of probiotics, and I'm bringing activated charcoal wherever I go. Because that'll prevent me from having to go to an ER and take an antibiotic. So I can almost always have that, and that works well. It just depends on how gentle the infection is. If it's minor, probiotics could be enough. If it's major, you probably want to do a combination. But the herbs, for me personally and clinically, having seen thousands of patients, works excellent. Dr. J, I'm not celiac, but reintroducing bread products, I'm finding times of nausea, bloating, and gluten encourages constipation. Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. Step away from the bread. Usama writes in, if we have gut imbalance, is it okay to use fiber? Can fiber not feed bad bacteria? How to save our food from bacteria? Okay, so in general with fiber, it depends upon how good or bad your gut is to begin with. It depends upon how well you do with fermentable carbohydrates, aka FODMAPs. If you're not familiar with FODMAPs, just go to our website, type in FODMAPs or SIBO, and go watch a video on that. It depends. People that can handle FODMAPs, we treat them a little bit differently than people that can't. So it really depends. Do I omit gluten products from now on completely? I'm hypothyroid, which can impair digestion. Yeah, I definitely would. Especially if your hypothyroid is caused by autoimmunity, which it probably is. I would definitely keep not gluten products, I would keep grain products out of here. And then maybe in a blue moon, I would cheat with some gluten-free stuff, maybe a rice flour, but ideally, I would try to always use some kind of an arrowroot or tapioca or cassava flour that's at least grain-free if I were to cheat. You got to be careful. If you have an autoimmune condition and you're really sensitive, you got to be really on point. You can't break the rules that often. So just be careful with that. All right, y'all, hope you enjoyed today's video. I got to jump on a patient call. Hope you enjoyed it all. If you did, comment below, justinhealth.com/iTunes for reviews. Really appreciate it. You guys have a phenomenal day, and I'll be putting out some more content later on this week. Take care, y'all. Bye.